All right, welcome to another Pinpoint Sprint Demo. We're already a week into October, if you can believe that. We're going to start with gold miners today. Let's get going.
I'm just do a quick demo. It's not so much of a demo visually because it looks like what we already have, but I'll explain a little bit about just a little prototype I did this morning before I came to work. So we met with our SEO person yesterday, Christy and I, and we're working through some SEO stuff for kind of broader Pinpoint and build better software, but also profiles, as a starting point for a bunch of other content that obviously will eventually roll out publicly. So one of the problems he immediately went through is like we're not getting credit or any SEO value out of the profiles right now, even if we share them. So he's going to work with us on that. But basically, there's a few problems, but one of them is that we redirect multiple times, and it doesn't matter if it's multiple. Ultimately, we redirect from the main pinpoint.com to another, like to either profile.pinpoint.com or app.pinpoint.com, depending on your state. And that means we don't really get credit SEO-wise for that. So one of the things he recommended is we need to try to do everything we can to serve content natively off the pinpoint.com domain, even if it's hosted on other sites, so that we can get Google credit for the inbound links for that. So I just did a quick prototype this morning. Luckily for our website, we're using Vercel. So I just did a quick prototype this morning. It's obviously running localhost, but where I'm streaming the content. In this case, I'm streaming it from profile, but you can imagine this would be on pinpoint.com/K. And so instead of it having a multiple time redirect, it would just render it natively on that URL, even though it's being sort of hosted, in a different website. So we wouldn't actually, we would instruct Google never to crawl, like for example, cards or pinpoint or cards.pinpoint.com or profile.pinpoint.com. We would set the canonical URLs to be the pinpoint.com/ whatever your profile vanity URL is. And then we would stream that content via the main website from a URL standpoint and SEO standpoint. So anyway, I just did a quick hack this morning to sort of see if I could get it to, luckily for Vercel, it's pretty easy. I can just set I just created a standalone project. But in Vercel, you can just create kind of a rewrite rule, and you can point a rewrite rule at an API, which is server-side rendered. And then that server-side rendered, I'm just basically fetching the profile from the destination, and basically doing just a couple little things like that. And that works really well. So as you can see here, we'll probably use this pattern if it works. We'll probably end up using this pattern for kind of all of our content. We have blog content. We have a bunch of stuff on HubSpot as well that isn't on the pinpoint.com domain. So we'll probably use a similar strategy for all that content as well. So the goal is to try to get pinpoint.com domain authority, which is kind of the ranking of how authoritative your content is for your domain. We have a pretty high authoritative score. It's 41 right now, 41 out of 100. But as an example, LinkedIn is 100. There's only a handful of sites in the world that are actual 100, but so we need to get our authoritative rank really high, and that means all the inbound links that are shared outside of Pinpoint that point back to Pinpoint need to be visible to Google. There's a whole bunch of rules on how that works, so we'll be working with him to do that. So anyway, that's the only thing I was going to share.
What's the definition of the authoritative score, Jeff?
Nobody really knows. I mean, there's the most popular SEO Moz, I believe, is the most popular kind of tool that kind of creates it. I was going to try to bring it up, but you can sort of put in, but basically it's page rank. So just a quick aside for those that don't understand. So the way Google works is they have this algorithm called page rank, and effectively the most simplistic way of looking at it is the number of inbound links to your site, and then what they do is they basically rank the content. Okay, well, I guess that's awesome. They rate limited me. They basically rank the content on your site. They create sort of a content model, and then they count the number of links going to your site in a simplistic way. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. And then based on the weighting of that site, then obviously you get more or less weighting in a ranking basis, and that's what drives your content up or down based on that type of content. So as an example, if we had thousands of, like maybe a better example, if New York Times wrote an article about engineering operations, let's say, and engineering development, workspaces and all that, and then pointed to Pinpoint, because New York Times has a really high domain authority, and because that content's about the things that our site's about, then we would get a huge amount of credit for that link. Because they have high authority, and a high authority site points to our page as an authoritative source. So you need a lot of high authority sources pointing at your site to sort of drive your domain rank up effectively.
Okay. So like the TechCrunch article would have helped with our domain.
Right. That's a great example. So we lost credit though because of our link in TechCrunch pointing to our sign up link, which was not on pinpoint.com. So that's a perfect example for Christy and I, that's a perfect example of coming up with a comprehensive strategy that isn't just about create content, create PR, do features on our website. It all needs to kind of work together so that, all these pieces kind of come together, to impact the company.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like we're not losing like 100% credit. It just does degrade the credit that we do get from those.
Attached to the subdomain, basically, right?
Right. And so, and another good thing, like another site that when I was originally doing some research on our domain authority, GitHub has a good domain authority. So anytime we're doing these open source projects, that's something that we should be thinking about linking back to our site where it makes sense.
GitHub no follows everything.
Oh, so, they do? Yeah. That's interesting because we actually, one of the high rated links, and I think you could see it on Moz, it used to be, this was a year ago probably, was it was a repo that was pointing back to us.
Yeah, if you look, the way you kind of know this is if you look at like let's go look really at Keegan's embed here. If you look at his embed, the way you always know this, the simplest way is if you look at the link, see it says no follow here. Can you guys see that? No follow means Google you won't get credit for that link, that inbound link to his profile. Now, it doesn't mean we still don't want to do this because we do, right? Because obviously there's other reasons we want to have visible, people to see it and all that kind of stuff. But like this is a perfect example. This link is a no follow. And this sort of canonical URL for this embed is not gonna be. It's an iframe, so that's the other problem. This is an iframe actually, it's an image, but obviously this is pointing to the other domain. So like Chrissy said, we'll get some credit, but nobody's gonna think cars.pinpoint.com is an authoritative because nobody's gonna write an article with high content pointing to that domain, right? Because that's one of our subdomains that we use for like redirects and whatever. So in a perfect world, this would point to pinpoint.com at K, and it would still render like normal, but it would be off the root domain. Even if like the technical aspects are running on cars.pinpoint.com, but that wouldn't ever be indexed. We would no follow, no index that site. And we would make those canonical URLs, if they ever got shared, point back to the Pinpoint canonical URL. So like if you look at like this, it's not working. It's like if you look here, like the canonical URL for this, when Google's to look at it, up here, the canonical URL is going to be this authoritative URL right here, pinpoint.com/@Jeff. So that's what's going to get registered in the index for Google or any search engine as the authoritative URL for this page. Now, obviously, I'm running it on localhost right now. Normally, you wouldn't run this on localhost, but so anyway, we're still learning, and we're going to work with Tommy to do a whole bunch of work around this, and there'll be more changes. But this is just an immediate one that when we were talking about, it's like, oh crap, this is a problem because we have all these subdomains and we designed it. How are we going to do this? And then that's why I was like, of course, thought about it all night, and then just did this quick little prototype to stream it. So.
Why do websites do the no follow? Is that just to discourage crawling?
It's because, okay, it's a good question. The reason is, and it's the reason everybody does it, like all social sites, pretty much everything that third-party links can come from will no follow those links by default. And the reason is because Google will do the inverse. It'll punish you if they're low quality links, right? So if you create link farms, you do lots of low quality link sharing, because the algorithm works in both directions, obviously, it'll credit you for high value content, and it'll really negatively decredit, negatively impact your rating if it's low quality, to prevent abuse, right? Prevent media from going out to create content farms and just creating lots of links that point back to sites that have low to no value. So that's why GitHub, third-party sites like GitHub, are going to no follow everything that's not created by them, because they don't know what those links, who those links are coming from, and what they're pointing to. And if they were to if they were to follow all those links, and Google said 90% of these links are crap, then they would punish GitHub.
That makes sense. So GitHub are basically covering themselves by making our links no follow.
Yeah. And that's why Twitter, all the social sites are going to no follow links. Unless, obviously, if Twitter was to write an original blog, the links that they would post on their blog would not be no follow. But like advertising, content sites, social sites, all that stuff is going to be no follow. So.
That was informative. Thank you.
Yep.
Do you have anything else on gold miners today?
I have a tiny demo. Sharing screen. Share. Okay, so my quick demo is about epics. I added a few missing fields in the issue model, and now we can see some of these counts with the right number.
And this is for GitLab, just to be clear.
Yeah, sorry. I always forget about specifying that. Yeah, this is about GitLab. And as I added linked issues as well, we can see these kind of messages saying that this contains a blocked issue, or if an issue is being blocked by another, you can also see that. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. What's next after GitLab?
The next assignment is to create issues like we do for Jira right now. And yeah, I hope I can share that in the next meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Carlos.
Yeah, no problem.
Pedro, are you able to do anything yet on Clubhouse, or are you not?
Yeah, no, I wasn't mentioning. I wanted to have something ready for today, but I don't have anything to show. I actually started to work on the UI of the integration. Wanted to get that done today. Basically, I'm working on the Clubhouse integration, which is an issue tracking system, and the most of the integration is already done on my end. I just gotta finish the UI, which is basically to be able to install it, and I'd like to get that in today and publish it to Edge, so I can start testing on the UI. So yeah, I'll show next week. I don't have anything that you can actually see as of right now.
Okay.
And the cool thing is we also have a customer who shall remain nameless that will be testing with us next week as well.
Yes, I'm actually looking forward to that.
Now I want to know who it is. Someone Slack me.
No, I'll tell you internally. Yeah.
I think that's gold miners finished then. Should we move over to Team Now?
Yeah, I've got something to show. Okay, so as we moved over to, we're switching the notebook over from the kind of block-based approach to being 100% a rich text editor. So I've been working on extending the schema and how the underlying library, which is called Prose Mirror, kind of models the document. So you can see here, this is I've integrated our new notebook editor with the daily screen. So it's got a little badge saying it's using the notebook editor, so I know which which version I'm looking at. And just been it's taken a little while to get my head around how we extend the schema, and at which point we can sort of integrate things like adding issues, PRs, and mentions for teams and users. So finally cracked that over the last couple of days. So we can do stuff like I can pick an issue. Might help if I actually use the right thing. So the UI might need a little bit of cleaning up. It's just a bit of a proof of concept at the moment, but this is the library comes back out to web app and like requests to search. So it's searching for that term, and it can, it uses the same search endpoint. So it'll just search based on that query string. I'll just pick one of these, and then we can. The nice thing with this debug is you can see how the document gets updated. So it's dropped in this entity, and this is how we've extended the schema. So we now have our own like node type of entity, and we can give it some attributes, which means that it separates the document structure and content from the rendering of it. So we could then, do whatever we want in the front end to render this and change how we render it down the line without having to actually store HTML or Markdown. We do store the Markdown at the moment. We're storing the document and the Markdown together and exposing those just because it makes it straightforward that the notebook does that parsing and serialization for us. But the document is the kind of source of truth for this, and it gives us the best. It's the best container to use and to pass around. And then I can also search for things like I can do name searches. So and it will come back with trying to think of an example. So I've just added teams and users who can do either. And then these are links as well, so I could click on a link. At the moment, this is being rendered inside the notebook, but I think we'd want to render these as a separate component provided by the web app. As you can see, these are the entities that it's creating within the document. So we can style those and do what we want with them. A bit slow to load, but that will load up the dashboard for that team.
Where are you getting the team names from there?
Where are we getting the team names from? So the notebook goes and makes a request back to the web app. I think it's might be showing all of the teams, including deleted teams. That's probably why it's showing ones that you wouldn't expect.
I'm just curious about that. Thanks.
Awesome.
What's nice about the content model, Chris, is when we actually do the search index part of this from the pipeline, we'll have much more richer detail for search. So instead of having to just like rip out all the HTML and like normalize it for the index, we'll actually, because we have all this rich data, we'll be able to actually build a much more sophisticated search index.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Hey, Chris. So when will this be available for us to use? I mean, it's pretty cool.
Everybody wants it do it fast as possible.
No, I mean, I want it now.
So, I mean, it's a shame Rick's not on to demo the collaborative stuff, because the bit kind of, we could obviously, so I've dropped this in as a replacement for the Markdown block that we have at the moment. So we could phase the approach and actually switch it over. So we could use this as a Markdown block in the old or in the existing notebook. So it would give us the ability to do this kind of thing. It's just a question of whether that's a little bit confusing when you also have a separate issue block and PR block and things like that.
It feels like we should just get it close enough to ready and port it over. I mean,
yeah. So the kind of, I think the stumbling block or the longest path for this is the collaboration stuff, because Prose Mirror does have a pretty sophisticated collaboration model. And there's some really good examples out there of how to do it, but it does mean we have to create a new service.
Hey, Chris, can you just play his video because not everybody has access to it? Could you just bring his video up and go full screen and play it? And I think it's an app, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, you can see that whereas at the moment we're kind of doing a back and forth every few seconds, this is using the collaboration framework, and it's pretty much real time. So once we do get this integrated, the experience is much better. It's much more flexible as well because we don't have to claim editing and we don't have to lock people out. You can just edit at the same time.
It's really good.
That's awesome. So what happens now? So before, previously, if someone was editing a block, it would show as locked, so somebody else couldn't go in and edit. So now you can just see the changes happening. You can make. So I could edit something as Scott was typing on it.
Yeah. The idea is that we the goal is to replicate the kind of Notion, Google Docs style collaborative editing. That's the aspiration. We're a little bit away from that just yet, but it works in that you send like migration or transaction steps. So if somebody, if I append this, then it's like I've appended, this character string at position, I don't know, 150 or something, whatever it is. This has a location, and I go to the server and I'll say, okay, this is the change I want to make, and the server will say, well, that's fine, but you've actually missed some changes in between. I'll give you those changes. You can apply those, and it basically uses the same principle that Git uses to rebase your changes on top of the changes that you should have had. And thankfully, that collision detection and conflict resolution is handled for us. Hopefully, I think there are some. It's maybe not as straightforward as just there might be some edge cases we have to look at. But once you apply those changes, then you try again and you say, okay, right, now I've got the correct version number, the latest version. Here's my change, and it will apply those. So if two people edit at the same time, you'll basically get. If they edit the same thing at the same time, it will be whoever made that change first, and then the subsequent changes will be appended to it. So that's the principle. We just need to get that service spun up and try it out.
Awesome. I definitely like this because now I can type about an issue and then actually add some context and everything rather than having to create another block underneath, which is kind of tedious if you were creating lots of blocks to talk about. So yeah, this is great.
Agree, because you can style it separate, than how you can organize it separate than what the entity is. Because sometimes, this is what we were talking about with Rick. I mean, sometimes you want it in a more of a list style, like a bulleted list. But other times you want to be able to, like you said, write a bunch of content underneath the issue. So it allows the user to organize the data however they need to do it based on their own use case.
Yeah, and these behave as what you'd expect. So it's a node. It's a block of text. So I can't go in and start editing this. I would delete it. So it's a single thing. You can see the cursor kind of moving between it. So it flows pretty well. Works in line. And the plan is that I'll replace these at the moment. They're being rendered inside the notebook. I'll render them from the web app to provide a component, so we can add stuff like issue state and things like that. Maybe the avatar of the assignee and things as well.
Yeah, and a hover state potentially if you wanted to see a detailed card.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Can you remind me? You may have shown this last week, but if you hit return there and added another line, are they separate? Like they're individual blocks, like Notion. Like I can drag them around and separately, or are they tied together somehow? Or
So at the moment we haven't explored much of this stuff, but the underlying Prose Mirror editor will kind of gives you drag and drop out of the box. We just might want to do something with how it's styled and things.
Yeah,
I've played around with it a little bit, but yeah, they are separate nodes. So yeah, it would be nice to be able to have some kind of interaction at the side, maybe like a grab handle, or we can edit them, we can rearrange them. And actually on that, I've also spent a bit of time looking at how we would extend, again, we want to put this into the document model, but how we would extend that to have the collaboration of the editor information, and who edits it, who created it, when, and who it was updated by. So again, that will be added into the document as attributes on individual nodes. We need to look at the collaboration stuff and how we actually persist this before we're going to spend any more time on that bit.
Awesome.
It's like great progress.
Yeah, it's great.
We'll see. And as you can tell, Pedro wants it now. So nothing carries a lot of weight. You got to get Pedro what he wants. Get Pedro what he wants.
I need it. I need it now. Yeah.
I love it.
Got anything else on Team Now? Going. All right, let's go over the gold miners. Not gold miners, sorry, Team Bolt. All over the place today.
I don't have anything, excuse me, I don't have anything visual this week, but something that I have been working on with Robin is getting write access going on sprint planning. And so I just wanted to give a little update that I've basically been completely overhauling the sprint planning screen. It all looks the same, but underneath it's a very different data structure that's going to let us do a lot of writing back to Jira in the next few days. So I'm hoping to get that stuff out for testing at some point this week with write access still behind a feature flag. But you should see a lot of improvements around sort of how it behaves and the data model that we use.
Awesome. Let me know when you're ready to start testing, and I'll jump in on that. Looking forward to it. So, Andrew, you got something to talk about? I see you're unmuted.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that all of my work for the content feed is pretty subtle and doesn't make for a very compelling demo. So I don't really have anything either.
Were you ever able to look at why the changelog wasn't showing up yesterday?
Yeah, so I think a big part of it has to do with the fact that that Medium dominates our content, right? And so I think a lot of the content we're going to wind up seeing is Medium. I sent a message yesterday to Scott because he was asking the same thing. And, there's a couple things we're going to be able to do once we start using or utilizing more of the data science model rather than just the strict tag matching. That would enable us to sort of cook the books a little bit and get our content a little bit closer to the top. Or the other option would be to just have like a featured content spot where we always put some of our stuff. Yeah, so we have some options that we can look at. But basically, what I think happened with the changelog is that it probably did come through, but it was probably drowned out by some other sources.
Hey, Andrew, I got an idea. We could just publish our changelogs to Medium.
I think the problem is the number of articles for a given topic on Medium is the problem, not so much that it's on Medium, it's not on Medium.
Yeah, so Medium will put, over our Medium feeds, we'll get 20 articles in an hour, and we only show 10. So if we get the 20 and we get our changelog, chances are we just won't see our changelog.
One thing that's frustrating about the Medium stuff, given especially how dominating it is right now on the feed, is that a lot of stuff's behind paywall. So a huge number of articles you can't read. At least I don't, because I don't have a subscription. So is there, I guess, a couple of questions. One is, can we detect that it's behind a paywall?
I am not sure, but I can look into it.
Because that might be nice to sort of, not serve things that are necessarily behind a paywall, or at least, somehow sort of do our own, page ranking, pinpoint rank. And then, so And then obviously trying to find, I know this is now that we have the content management stuff set up, but we need to try to go find, many more sources for some of that content, for some of those topics than just Medium.
Right.
Should we just remove Medium for now? And so those other sources can have a chance to show up?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think this is kind of like that SEO discussion, right? Like, we right now have a good amount of low quality content, right? That, it's just to make it look like we have content right now. But as we sort of start getting more sophisticated with this feed, what we can do is start to limit the amount of low quality content, because then we'll have enough high quality content to actually serve and make it look like a living, breathing content feed. Right. So, it's
tracking.
Definitely
we
get
are
rid
tracking.
of Medium.
Andrew, we are sending web track events for every click now.
Oh, cool.
In the feed, and which article you clicked on, who the user was, all that information. I will say there is decent amount of low quality, but I am at least once a day, or maybe sometimes twice a day, reading at least one of the articles. I mean, I'm finding it interesting enough that I'm finding one article a day, which for me is valuable.
What model?
How do we grab that?
What model is the track? Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Where is all this click tracking data? Where does that live?
All the web track events right now go into Elastic, and we have an endpoint already, I think, on Graph for being able to query that data. So you guys could ingest that for your model and use that for training data, or whatever whatever you want to use it for.
Is it also coming through Event API?
Yeah, all that's evented. But there's in Event API, there's a specific tracker in Event API that pushes it into a tracker index in Elastic.
Okay. So what's the topic if I wanted to listen for it?
Yeah, just listen to web.track and then put your filter on. I'll give you a link. I'll post a link in Slack directly to like the attributes for those articles. So you can see what additional metadata will be, that you can listen for or whatever, or what additional stuff you would want to do. But yeah.
Okay. And I guess the other update is right now the summary is a bit of a word salad, right? So I've been playing around with Google Pegasus, which is an abstractive summarizer. So it's a little bit more complicated than a extractive summarizer. Extractive is basically if I had a highlighter and I just highlighted interesting sentences in an article, right? Abstractive is more if I summarized it in my own words. So Google has sort of an open source thing out there that allows, I guess, an open source model that allows people to use abstractive summarizers with their things. And right now, I guess my little sample has turned a Kubernetes article into 2 sentences, which is not very good. It's very short, so I need to figure out how to just make it longer and sort of go from there. The summary for a Kubernetes article about webhooks is, in this article, we'll build a mutating webhook. This is a way to inject a file into pod containers.
Not terrible.
That's it.
I mean, for 2 sentences.
It's probably very accurate, but yeah, I'm looking to make it more like 5 or 6 sentences. So we'll see.